We have internet. Yeah, we are so fucked. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. This internet. I don't want to work. I don't know going to work. What stance is going to have to the internet? How do I assume this is going to go? I don't know. Anyways, let me get this over here. Let me take this out. Yeah. Let me also try to set up this. My God, what a good sleep. What a beautiful thing it is to go to bed and sleep. Man. Um, I don't know. Let me see. I am over here. I have to set this up. Why do I have what? What the fuck is happening? Anyways, I am a little bit sleepy, as I can probably notice. So yeah, and that aside, um, we have to watch. Yeah, I didn't set it up. Obviously, we have to watch these properties. Let me. Yeah, this. Okay, there it is. Wait, what? What? Why is it? What the fuck? Why is it bad? Why is there a problem with this? I am missing something or something like that. There. What? Huh? Let me see. I have more zoom than what I had before. Less 75. Let's see. At 70. Okay, there it is. I don't know what the fuck is that. So, anyways, we have that over there. I shouldn't be missing anything, right? I have background, my background, and desktop audio so that I can properly capture. Yeah, I think I'm not forgetting it. And if I am, I will learn my snippets. Anyways, let me get this over here. Send that. Also pin. Pin. Yeah, I want to pin. There it is. How much? 3 hours. There it is. No, let me close this.
So today we're going to talk about attention, and sometimes we talk about patients who are like very unusual. In the next lecture, we will do that. We'll talk about spectacular disorders of.
What? Why? Wait.
But today we're going to talk about attention as it typically occurs in you sitting here right now. I want to convince you that in addition to slips of attention that can occur as you get older, also how you attend to the world around you is weirder than you think, okay? In a broad sense, I hope to convince you that it's happening all the time, right now, as you go back to your room, as you walk to the next class or your room. How you attend to what's around you in the world is weirder than you think, okay? So what is attention? What do we mean by attending to things? So William James was a psychologist at Harvard who in many ways articulated concepts in psychology that till this day turn out to be sort of beautiful ways to talk about them in an everyday sense. Everybody knows what attention is the taking possession by the mind in clear and vivid form of one out of what seems like several simultaneous objects or trains of thought. It implies withdrawal of some things in order to deal with others. So a big idea there is we can pay attention to some things, and there's a lot of things around us. And so we have to pick where we focus our attention. A little bit like if you have a budget, if you have some money, what do you spend your money on, and what do you not spend your money on? So we're going to talk about attention. It's kind of similar to the idea of awareness. What are you aware of, or what are you conscious of? And two themes across the talk will be we often attend to more than we realize, and I'll show you very specific and evidence for that. But we often attend to things less than we realize all the time.
I think I could make a stupid over here because in reality, the topic itself of attention is by itself interesting to delve on. Not because it lacks things in general, but rather because it has so many varying things that when you speak about it in a more fluid way, it also becomes apparent that if it is true that the attention is the purposefully trying to put the mind into doing or into observing the things that you actively are deciding to instead of simply flowing, well, not flowing, rather letting your whole mind be, more appropriately to say. It is also kind of important to note that the whole idea of attention can be increased because, in a certain way, we have our attention prepared for the act of observing different parts of our reality. And when you, in a sense, or well, yeah, in the sense of attention as a sense of the self, let's say, it is also even more apparent that when you are speaking about paying attention to things, if you haven't ever tried in your life to do it, it will be a hard thing to start working on. But if you, on the other side, have been assiduously every single day and analyzing what it is that is in front of you to finish everything with a proper observation of the work that lies in front of you, or what in the whole thing that you're analyzing, more properly to say, when you can properly distinguish every part or every consuming part of those things that you have been observing for so long, it is in those moments that you can say your attention reaches such a level that the simple act of discerning what is and what is not true becomes almost kind of a race. So yeah, I think that is a good way to put it. I don't know if it is the easiest one, but it is an interesting one. So, one sure, anyway, see that. Let me now advance to the second.
And here's roughly so the outline. We're saying attention, what you pay attention to is kind of a gatekeeper to what you perceive and what you know. Attention is very limited. We can only process one thing at a time, and because of that, we miss a lot around us all the time. There are unconscious processes that pick up information, so sometimes things that we don't notice do influence us. And attention can be viewed as kind of a dialogue between two things. Between things in the world that capture your attention. If somebody throws a ball at you, something dramatic happens, you hear a scary sound that captures your attention. We talk about that as bottom-up processing. It impinges on you, it forces you to attend to it because it's dangerous, it's moving, it's unusual. And then top-down things. What's your goal? What are you paying attention to? What do you care about? What are you up to? People call that top-down processing. So things that the environment drives into your attention because they're so dramatic, bottom-up.
What? Why don't you reveal? No, this is so sharp. This is so sharp. Maybe, I think it's already happened to you in the past, that somehow your own points redeem system gets broken. I don't know why, but yeah, anyways, welcome. And do not worry, you might refresh, try again, and if it still doesn't work, I would at the very least know that it was your intention to do it, and I would be happy because you at the very least tried. But anyways, yeah, no, do not worry. And as well.
Things that you're looking for, thinking about, are useful for your purposes, top down.
Oh no, oh yeah, I love my beautiful copyright claims. So, in a sense, taking into account what was said right now, I also think it is not, I don't know if it is simply important or more like interesting to keep observing the possibility of itself, of taking into account the different contexts that play a role in the things that you decide to actively observe. It is in those moments that it is the record. I told you that you just needed to refresh. Now for real, welcome. And the whole side of paying attention to things lies in a more deeper level than just simply saying, this is an urgent thing that I should be observing, or this is simply, something particular that I should be trying to pay my utmost attention because I know it is needed for me to do it, or it is my obligation. It is more like a complex play of things, all the time trying to take the focus, and you actively try to decide which one of them is it that you're going to pay attention. Because even in a more deeper level, those people who sometimes lack the capacity of understanding what might be the most important thing to do I had to say so. Anyways, those people who lack the capacity of observing what it is that in the moment requires their attention also learn in time that it isn't simply something your attention is something that gets automatically directed into something or into not something, let's say. It is more like a whole process that takes a longevous amount of trial and error to know if it is there or not, basically. And well, so, well, because at this place I'm going to go crazy. Let me not fucking use this is this is quality. So there it is. There it is. No more this fucking sounds. So yeah, basically that.
There's tremendous evidence that we encode a very small fraction of what's around us in a very specific way. So we go. Let's estimate with me how often a day, on average, since you've been about 5 or 6 or 7 and you've been allowed to have any money in your possession at all, do you think you've held or seen a penny? Okay, so we all know the horror when you're heading 4 cents and change, right? That's 4 pennies right there. Right? Okay, so we'll make an estimate, right? Pretend from age 5 to 20 you've been handling change. So maybe you've encountered 3 pennies a day. Okay, it's reasonable. Okay, we don't have to be just in the right ballpark. There's 365 days a year. Skip 15 years, right? Just do the multiplication. You end up with about 16,380 penny experiences. Okay. All right. So we all know that as you head towards midterms, it's going to be hard to study a lot of stuff quickly. But if somebody said to you, if you study something approximately 17,000 times, okay, you think, well, that one I'm going to get. Okay. So let's ask the question. Does the Lincoln penny face to the left or the right? Is there anything above his head or below his head? Is there anything on the penny to the left or to the right? And how about the other side? And how many of you with approximately 17,000 or certainly many thousands of visual experiences with a penny would bet something that means a lot to you on the correctness of the answer to these 5 fundamental questions? Okay? All right. Oh, this is good teamwork. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Let's make it multiple choice. That's better, right? All right. You're making me feel better because of the follow-ups, and I appreciate that. This is the actual choice. Okay. So what do you think it means that 17,000 exposures to a penny don't leave in you a reasonably accurate memory of the main things you see in a penny? Well, how could that happen? And it happens to everybody. In fact, when they do experiments, here's people's drawings. Okay, don't feel bad if you didn't know it. I mean, it's psychology. Half the people don't even think that the version that you show them, if you ask them, is plausibly correct.
I think there is something kind of crucial here, and that is the idea or the notion that it might be true, yes, that we ourselves have observed a lot of times different things, but it doesn't mean nor constitute that those things which we have observed were our focus. And if we haven't really, let's say, been trying to take out every single detail that there is on the different things that surround us, you cannot expect, even if you have supposedly seen every single day, three times a day, for every single month of the year, for the past 15 years, things that I am pretty sure doesn't happen that much even. Even if you have seen it that many times, 17,000 times, it doesn't really mean that you have been observing the goal and you have been consciously trying to see the defining details that make that goal be what it is. In reality, it is more like a complex array of things that if you never stop to see and to observe and to create a proper map, you cannot really say correctly find a sense of, I would say. But at the same time, kind of in that same sense, it will be even logical to expect that those who, for example, work in topology, or is it topology, the people that creates map, those who basically create maps, those kind of people might not really have the possibility of always being right about those things that they are speaking about. Mostly because if you want to be correct, you need to constantly be observing the things. So it is kind of expected that when in your profession you need to be sometimes down to the minor detail, observing and properly saying, yeah, this is what constitutes this particular plane, this particular map, this particular whole structure. If you are wrong about something, it doesn't really mean that you weren't paying attention. It is more like the human brain itself has the tendency to discard information. Therefore, you can accept that if it happened to you, it might as well have been something that ended up succeeding because you weren't really needing that one so much. At the end of the day, even if we do not want it, our unconscious mind is aware of the fact that we do not really care so much about some things. We kind of see them and we kind of know about them from a more, let's say, sidetrack vision. But in reality, most of the time, our unconscious mind is already aware about the different kind of informations that we are intaking and that yeah, which we will never utilize in our life, let's say. So yeah, I guess all of that is more important than to simply say, haha, you have seen 7,000 times a coin, you have failed to properly remember a coin, you're stupid. What? It wasn't that particular sense, or it wasn't with that particular emotion the way in which they said it, but at the same time, it kind of feels like that when you have the possibility of saying something and decide to go for the moves. Haha, such an error, such a human error. Wow, wow. There like a little bit more of an explanation as to why it happens, but yeah.
You show them
Anyways,
crickets and you go, no. Please give me, yeah, that can't be right, okay? So here's one thing. If we don't attend to something very specifically, we can see it a tremendous number of times and it leaves no impression on our mind and no memory of it, right? Now, why is that? In an everyday sense. We don't know in a deep science sense, but what do you think the point of it is? Why don't you know what a penny looks like? Because it's not important, somebody said. Yeah, because it's close enough to see that brown, smallish thing, and you don't need the rest of the information to hand the money back and forth, right? So what you attend to, what you decide is important, makes an incredible difference, and nothing else makes up for it. 17,000 exposures don't make up for what a penny looks like.
Oh my God! Yes.
So
yes.
actually, it was research at MIT that used this method of simultaneously processing two messages in the two ears: the shadowed message, the one you're copying, and the second message, the one that you try to pick up, but it's hard to do. So they ask, in the ear that you're not paying attention to, what can you pick up? Here's what you can pick up if a voice is present. Now you just imagine silence versus somebody talking. That you can notice. If the voice changes from a man to a woman, okay? If it changes from a man to a woman, you can pick that up in the unattended ear, the one you're not paying attention to. Or if the voice goes, a person's talking and all of a sudden goes, you notice that, okay? Here's what you don't notice. Anything about the content. I mean, that's what you experience. You can switch the language of the message. You can go from English to Spanish or Italian. A person won't notice that it changed. You can change you can also change whether it's typical speech or backward nonsense speech, which sounds very weird, okay? You don't notice that either. So you notice a few things, but there's a lot of other things you don't notice at all. Now, you may have all had the experience of what's called the cocktail party phenomenon. Do you know what that is? Have you ever been, talking with people?
Okay, look this. Wait a second. I mean, in a sense, it is kind of obvious that. Oh, well, yeah, it isn't obvious. More like, let us get back to this one. This one in particular. When you're not paying attention, therefore unattended ear, it basically means that you are not needing to observe what is being said. You simply are analyzing the surroundings with your subconscious mind for the minimal possibility of finding things that might as well be a danger and a threat to you, as you might never know where it is that, let's say, in a more primal sense, predators are lying, waiting for you to fail, or kind of preparing their next big plan to get you, or something like that. It is simply, if you can notice that there is sound, basically, if a voice is present or not if it if, yeah, in general, the act of knowing if it is a voice or not doesn't really mean anything. You only want to know what the sound is and probably what is making it, if it is that much of a thing that you are worried about. In the case of you not knowing that there is people, that is one thing. The other one is man or woman in the sense of a more survival approach. Your different chances of fighting or having to face things that are, let's say, yeah, not things, more like animals that are on the men's side or on the woman's side are also kind of interesting, I would say, in that sense, because you might as well be preparing yourself differently. If you know, for example, that what is going to approach you is not really another simple mm, animal, but rather a thing that might as well overpower you because it is one of those few exceptions where a male animal is increasingly stronger than what the woman counterpart is. You also start to pay attention to that. And obviously, as I said before, if it becomes a tone or not, doesn't really mean that you're not interested in knowing if it is a voice. You simply are observing your surroundings with your hearing sense all the time, and you're assessing if there are things that you do not know about and you are not aware about, yet that you should be aware because they might as well become a threat more than anything else. There are other reasons like they might even become a thing of interest for you, but it's kind of hard to see anything like that. So yeah, and in that same sense, it is kind of explained or it is kind of implied when you see that, for example, here, what is not understood by any of this because you are simply unconsciously observing your surroundings, the content, the language, or the different what the content, the language, or the change in the language of the message itself doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, you are not paying attention to things that are happening in the background. The most probable thing I will say that could change your behavior is if out of nowhere you were to hear somebody to start instead of speaking, maybe changing the way in which they were, let's say, now they started to whisper, and because they are whispering, you might as well be interested, because you know that if they are whispering, something changed for them to need to whisper. Or why is it that they started to actively whisper if it is that they are actively whispering? Or kind of the opposite, if they were whispering, they changed into a normal or even a completely, let's say, shouting zone. It will only be important to you when you see that as a necessity to get it. And even more still, it doesn't really constitute that much of a change if you, for example, still do not understand what it is that they are saying. Because if the language in which the message is being spoken is not one that you can comprehend, you can only get the gist of the feelings of that particular language if you have in front of you that those persons and if you have the capacity of discerning the different sentiments they have. And also, no, sorry, what the fuck? There it is more proper. Hello, Kim Mike. So yeah, it is kind of complex because it has a lot of variants that I might as well be taken into account before really saying or before really discarding anything. Yet it is still interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think that is kind of a proper explanation that could be given to this phenomenon. I don't think it is a
Of the
phenomenon,
cocktail,
but
what's called the cocktail party phenomenon. Do you know what that is? Have you ever been, talking with people? You're at a party, you're at some events or something like that, and somebody mentions your name, especially your first name, but your name. So maybe your last name works too. And then all of a sudden you notice a conversation around you, and it's almost hard to pay attention to the person you're talking to because the person over there has just said your name, and you wonder what they're saying about you. Now, here's a really interesting paradox. How did you
holy
not
fuck.
notice that other conversation, which you didn't? That's like the shadowing task. I'm talking to one person. There's some hubbub over here. I don't know what they're talking about. Right? All of a sudden, they say you're my name, and I notice what they're talking about. Well, how did that happen? I wasn't paying attention to it. I don't know anything about it, but my name pounced out in my mind and drew my attention to it. So it's kind of a paradox, right? I'm not paying attention, but somehow I pick up my name. And so we'll talk a little
Oh
bit more
my
about
god.
this, but people have looked at this very experimentally. So here's how they approached it. They would, again, hear a sentence in one ear. The man approached the bank. That's the one they're repeating. And in the other ear, they would hear one of two different words. In the unattended ear, they're not getting much out of that. They would hear the word money or river. So now the bank could be interpreted as you went to the bank to deposit your paycheck, or you went to the bank to have a picnic by the river, right? Two different meanings of the word bank are suggested by the word you hear in the ear that you're not processing information.
My brother, wait, what the fuck is this?
And then people tell you, well, tell me what the
What is
sentence
the
you just heard, kind of.
explanation
And
for
people are
what?
primed to give the interpretation of the sentence that goes with the word that's suggested in the ear they weren't listening to, okay? So something in their mind and brain heard enough of that to influence what they're interpreting in the attended ear. Here's another example.
Okay, wait, then if you're going to ignore what you just asked before, let me do it myself. In a sense, the different explanation as to why, out of nowhere, you can notice when your name is said is because you consciously know that your name carries an importance. And if your name is spoken, it means that somebody might as well be at least talking about you to the degree to which it should concern you, because you do not know, as I said before, if what they are going to say is a threat to you or not. And that is why, in a sense, if you can properly somehow analyze things and kind of discern if what is being said is interesting or not, and even more, not just see them, but even more, have them properly separated one from the others in a whole array of things, in a whole array of different knowledges that you know. For example, this person is talking about me in a sense of pray. This another person is simply talking about me because they were interested about me. And this another person that I have in front of me is speaking about me because they are referring to me and they are offering me something. You are only capable of understanding that your name is being said because you want to know what those different contexts are. It doesn't really mean that you out of nowhere get your attention scattered when you weren't really prepared for, let's say. Because it is, as it was said, you weren't, before your name being said, you weren't paying attention to those other conversations. It is only when it happens actively that they somehow pronounce you that you can see them, let's say. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I don't think I have that much to add. It it is more of a complex thing because it has to deal also with the idea of sometimes you might as well get quote unquote distracted because your mind might wander into things that sound similar to your name, but at the same time, it only really happens if you're incapable of properly managing your own attention and properly utilizing what you already have inside of you to try and discern and try to analyze and try to observe properly the world that is surrounding you. Because otherwise, it is impossible for you to even have the capacity of even exerting attention, be it as minimal as it is. Holy fuck. So, yeah, that is the point. I don't really see anything else happening in the background aside from that. Or I wouldn't be capable of saying anything more, at least so far. So, yeah, continue.
They're shadowing, they're paying attention and repeating aloud an essay in one ear. And in the other ear, they hear something that's like the word, like a word taxi fare. And they pick words that are spelled two different ways, homonyms. So the word F-A-R-E or F-A-I-R. Now, if you were typically, if I asked you to write down the word fare and spell it correctly, you might say, well, which one do you want or something like that. But if I didn't tell you anything, most people would put down the word F-A-I-R most of the time. It's a more common word. But what they found is this. They finished the experiment. They shadowed one thing. They had a word like taxi fare in the unattended ear. And they said, well, did you notice you got that word? Well, if you listened to it, you remembered you heard taxi fare. But if you were shadowed, you very rarely remembered that you heard it. So it's not consciously available to you that you heard it because you were so busy in the other ear and in your mind listening to your. But if you asked to spell the word, how often do you come up with a rare spelling because of what you heard in your ear? It's exactly the same. So part of your mind heard that word, thought about that phrase, taxi fare, and when somebody says to you, write down the word fare, your mind got moved to think about the alternative spelling. So unconscious processing of that content has influenced you in an experimentally verifiable way. So what this shows, if you go back to the cocktail party effect, which is the everyday kind of version of this, is that weirdly enough, some kinds of things that we don't pay attention to have such a property that in a machine-like reflexive way, our mind and brain process it to some extent anyway. And then there's something curious that we don't understand deeply, which is somehow if it's your name, it's going like, I'm hearing my name, pay attention over here, okay? That's like deep psychological computational theory, right?
Yeah,
and somehow you pull it out because it's triggered your mind enough because our names are so important to us. Yeah.
I cannot hear. Amazing question, but I cannot hear shit.
Okay, tell me again. So the phenomenon where if you notice a word, go ahead, so tell me again, sorry. Comes in your... Yeah, it's very much related to the same thing. The question was, something pops in your head, a word, and then you look back and you go, wait a minute, I just read that, but I wasn't even thinking about it or something, or somebody said it or it's on a sign, but yes, that something, some experience you're not paying much attention to tips your mind to think a certain way, and all of a sudden you're thinking that way, and you don't know what tipped your mind that way. That's very similar, yeah.
I mean, in that sense, that particular concept is also related to the idea of the first type of subliminal messages that were created before, because sometimes it was possible to instigate in the mind the appearance of particular ideas when you, subtly enough, flash different things on people to the degree to which they kind of realize about what was said, not enough to be a conscious realization, but rather an unconscious one, because out of nowhere they saw a flashing thing happen and weren't completely able to act upon it. Simply processed what was shown to them, in this case also heard, and after that the brain decided to do with it a proper analysis of what it was. And obviously, because the main idea of propaganda is to influence you to do something, they ended up feeling like it was the correct thing to get this particular product, or it was kind of an interesting proposition to start observing this, whatever it is, because by itself it also meant that basically when you analyze most of the things, you notice that they do not really have that much of a bad property. You can only accept what is their usage for you. Therefore, when even more when your unconscious mind is doing it, the most unavoidable result is to go back and to see, yeah, this happened, therefore I might as well try to get this particular object. Because why not? At the very least, this thing appeared in my mind, therefore it might as well mean something, no? So yeah, something of that sort. Now, yeah.
So again, the message here is, how, because you're walking around in the world, there's a very few things that you're very specifically really aware of, and many things can change on you in these examples. Okay. So, one of the reasons this is just a thought, that you can be, by being selective in attention, you can focus on what you want to focus on. It's not only a weakness, it's a strength. So you could pick out the message in red, or you could pick out the message in blue. Where you attend helps you select information that's relevant. But here's two more works. And examples almost all the examples I just showed you were from Dan Simons, who's done really beautiful work in this way, made it very available to, so here's two YouTube ones.
Fucking oh, how many copyrights? How much copyright is it going to be here? Let me see. How much? I saw at the very least too. How much more fucking copyright claims is this particular video going to have before I can continue watching this? Two more, no more. I don't have to worry after the next two about other. This video clip removed due to copyright restrictions. Wow, let me watch. Fuck. So, anyways, what I can say, copyright. That is all I can say. Copyright, amazing.
Sometimes people have said, okay, these are cute laboratory things where you're having people counting, but the real world is different, okay? When I'm out of the classroom and I'm out of the laboratory, the real world, you kind of notice a lot more because it's real people, real situations. So this is one more example. That's a beautiful example of this.
Oh, oh yes. Oh yeah. I love my examples. Fucking god. This is quality content. This is real quality content. And also, hello, Masuro. We're so far struggling with really learning about anything today because I think so far there have been like 5 different copyright claims in this one lecture. So amazing content, basically. But well, if I were to guess what was talked about here, if I am not wrong, the main idea is how an average person might not really observe their whole world and how many things might end up happening. Yeah, basically it is up to us to make them. So that is what I am at my best and utmost capacity trying. Because the idea is you cannot really notice that many things. And when you are out in the world, as your attention tends to drift only to those things that you see important. And while it is true that if you are thinking, let's say, about any particular concept, if you are particularly studying something, or if you are focused on, let's say, playing a video, common things that might happen in the life of those who are here, you can know that other things in your surrounding might not be that much noticeable. Because a lot of times it will happen that, for example, there is background noise, but you are not really paying attention to that background noise because maybe it isn't even necessary for you to be paying attention to that background noise. Only when a person develops the necessity of the skill itself of kind of analyzing their whole surrounding with, I will say, all the senses to kind of see and, yeah, as I said before, assess, properly digest, and deconstruct all the things that are happening kind of in a, what is it, in a predatory manner almost, because you start to take into account everything just for the sake of knowing what is there. When you do that, you can properly say, yeah, I know where is it that I am placed on. But if you are not actively trying to go for that, it will be kind of impossible for anybody to notice every single event that is going on in the ambient. And even more, while you are doing it, you might as well keep missing things. Because if something happens in such a short amount of time, you, because you were already observing other things, if you didn't see it consciously, you will still miss those so short events. So yeah, it is a kind of logical notion that you will miss things if you aren't really properly seeing them, I would say. And if you don't even more are actively and without the proper capacity serving them. So yeah, continue. Something like that.
So do you think it would have worked if the replacement person was like very different? If it would have been a man or a woman, or if a very taller person versus a person not nearly? No. But what does that mean? Why does it work for this one? And why would it? It means that in the person's head, they have a very rough picture of who they're talking to. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of room for replacement, not total room, but a very rough picture, but it's right in front of them. Okay, now you've seen this thing, so I want to do it as a demonstration now, where people simply read the words, red, orange, brown, and that's easy because you're a very automatic reader. If you're a typical adult, you read about 250 words a minute. Okay, zoom, zoom, zoom. But if you have to name the color of the print, when the print is contradicted by the word, right? So you're reading the word red printed in green, but your job is to say green. That naming of the print, when the word is not matching the color of the print, slows people down. They make mistakes. They're slower. And that's because there's a big lesson in this. It's great to get automatic at things. That's how we're skilled at things. Speaking, driving, everything physical. We don't even think about how we walk, right? The price of automaticity, being really skilled and reflexive, is you lose control, right? You lose control. So you don't want to think about what that word says, but you can't help it. Now, let me touch one more thing. How many people think, and just be honest in your seat, that hypnosis is kind of baloney?
Okay, that is stop here. This Vamos Jackass Hilosian. Welcome. So far, I think we have been studying a little bit, so basically that is what we're going on today. Now, a more proper idea is, while it is true that sometimes we cannot really completely process things, the other, I think it is more than anything else my own posture on this, right? Because I haven't already said too much, only me, that if you work on your skills to properly separate those things that you are observing, and even more, have an even keener sense of observation, let's say, then you will develop those capacities. You wouldn't expect a human to out of nowhere be completely capable of assessing and properly, not regarding, properly categorizing all the things that happen in their life when they before haven't really tried that. So yeah, it is obvious that we are going to struggle with things as long as we're not doing them before, and as long as we never have practice on those anything. But yeah, anyways, continue.
Okay. All right, a lot of you. This is MIT, right? Okay. So I'm going to tell you, I think a lot of hypnosis, the kinds of things where, if I learn how to hypnotize people, then they can all vote for me or something like that, right? That's not good. That doesn't work. And people who are serious about hypnosis will tell you that hypnosis is in the person, it's not in the hypnotizer. It's in the person, it's not in the hypnotizer. And it turns out that in ways that are not well understood, there are some people who are highly hypnotizable and some people who are not. Okay, so this is why I think we're suspicious, because if we're not, we're going like, well, they must be faking it or pretending or whatever. But let me tell you what they did, and let me see if this convinces you at all as an experiment. So they told people sometimes to read those words where it's confusing because you're reading the color of the print, and the word is contradictory, it slows you down, okay? They told them, imagine those characters are characters in a foreign language that you do not know. Would the content of the word mess you up for the color of the print? No, right? Because if it's a language you don't know, it's just stuff, and you can just name the, okay? And they asked them to imagine that. Now, here's what happened. For people who are low hypnotizability, you can give people questionnaires, and they're pretty good at these kinds of measures. They're slowed down by about 1/10 of a second per word when the information is contradictory. And when they're asked to imagine it's a foreign language, it's about the same. They're low hypnotizables. You can tell them, imagine it's a print you don't know. Doesn't matter, okay? Here's a high hypnotizable. Also slowed down, but when they imagine it's a print in a foreign language they don't know, not slowed down at all. So that's behavior, that's evidence,
Okay, wait. In a sense, I don't think this is properly traceable things to kind of contrast here. But if there is such a big difference between those low what is it, susceptibility, susceptible, not so susceptible, subsets, let's say, between those who are low and those who are high, there is such a high difference when they are first facing the problems. It might also mean that sometimes those people might really be needing kind of previous, what is it, explanations and even more proper tools given to them to deal with those problems. Because I don't think it is that good to say it, but it feels like sometimes those brains might as well be searching for what they have inside of them. And if a possible tool is presented to them, instead of having to create something new themselves, they utilize that so that they can properly see if it is useful or not. It is more like not that they are susceptible or not, but rather that they wish to have a better understanding of the world in which they live, let's say. And their unconscious desire is to assess more of everything that surrounds them. Because in a sense, almost I would say, they might as well be living in a very anxious manner. Because you might as well not really knowing where is it that you're standing on. You might have that impending sense and desire of understanding where is it that you are sitting on. Because if not, why would you be or feel safe at the end of the day? So yeah, basically something like that.
Okay, and we don't think you can fake it, because how would you fake it? But here, in case you were still worried about that, here's the brain imaging evidence from just the people with high hypnosis, the high hypnotizable people. Here's what you see here turned on is our brain areas are turned on when you have to do the difficult task where it's contradictory versus the easy task, okay? All this area you see turned on in the anterior cingulate, and especially, which is an area that we know is involved when things are contradictory or paradoxical and people are sorting it out. Look what happens to that when these individuals...
What the fuck? Well, yes, probably I like that. I like hello, empathies. Yes. Yeah, probably. I don't know what to say.
are imagining it's a foreign text. It's pretty much gone. Okay, so I'm as skeptical as anybody about behavioral claims. I really am. I think hypnosis is real for some people and very powerful for some people. And for other people, it doesn't work at all. I happen to be in the low hypnotizable category, okay? But I think there's, I'm as skeptical as anybody.
But yeah, I already told you that I like the package. Yeah, are you happy with that? Are you even hearing, or are you still on the app and you are spamming the chat?
I think there are people who can do remarkable things by hypnotic suggestion, but it's in them. It's not in the, a person who hypnotizes you, so to speak, can help you a little bit. but it's in you whether you have that approach to control of your thoughts or not. Okay. So let's go back to a task. So we're going to talk again about these two ideas. So there's things, top-down and bottom-up processes, and different things, ways that you can attend to the world. So I'm going to ask you to consult your own intuitions for the following thing. I'm going to show you things on the displays on the monitor, and your job is simply to answer in your own mind as quickly as you possibly can. Maybe just, if you're willing to do it aloud, let's just say yes or no aloud, okay, if you're willing to do it. As quickly as you can, whether you see a red X. Sometimes there's a red X, sometimes not. So ready? No, okay, sorry, that's my get ready. No, great.
Yeah.
The MIT is easy. Sorry. All right. Okay, ready? Red X or not? Great. Ready?
Yes.
No, okay. Thank you. I know. Ready? Red X or not? Whoa, you guys are amazing. Yes. Now, look how many places you had to look to find it. But did it feel that way, or did it seem to what they call pop out? It's just obvious. It's just there, okay? So imagine I gave you this task. I said, go into this room and please get a particular book. And you go into the room and there's one book there, and you picked it up. Would that be easy? Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, obviously, if you're aware about what you need to search, no matter if you're highly susceptible or not, you will have an easier time. Because if you know what you need to look for, you will not struggle so much. At the end of the day, when you're given a task, and even more, when you're given the possibility to know what it is that you need to do, your mindset will also tune to the activities which you are trying to realize, even more than to simply try and guess if it is that you are seeing something. At the end of the day, if you were simply observing this whole photograph, I would say, without really knowing, having the necessity of finding out if there is an X or not, you might notice them later on. Maybe ask yourself why. But if you do not have the necessity of finding them out, you might as well watch everything before going into more particular sides of this. Even if the different X's that are there are red or not, or in a more natural environment, even if there is one lion around all the tiny details, it doesn't really mean that you will pay your utmost attention to the lion. You might as well first observe everything. Only if you know that you need to watch out for lions, you will be first and foremost observing if there is one or none at all. Something like that. I don't know. Continue.
You go into a room and you go, my gosh, there's hundreds of books in this room. Would that be easy? Now, here are many, many more things to find the red X, but your mind instantly, easily, trivially finds it, right? Okay, so now let's try another version of this. Yes? Okay, get ready. All right, slower, harder. Okay, some disagreement. Okay, all right. So let me show you data under well-controlled conditions. And here's the concept. People think that in many ways when we look out in the world, there's features, things like simple things, shape or color. Those are the two we're looking at here. But in order to combine those, to know the same thing out there has this shape and this color, to glue together features, we have to have attention. And so when the display looked like this, a single feature, redness, helps you, okay? A single feature, redness, helps you. You don't have to worry about the shape. Now, you have to worry about the shape and the color to decide the red X. Worse yet, right? Now it's a slower, harder process. And when people do this, here's exactly what they find. If it's just a feature by shape or by color, and that alone will tell you the answer, you can have one thing, a few things, and many things, and boom, your mind instantly discovers it, instantly. This is how long it takes you to do it. But if you have to combine two things together, the shape and the color, and the very same thing, combine those things, you need the glue of attention, and the more things that are out there, the more your mind has to search until it finally finds it.
I mean, that is kind of the basic that ends up creating those, what is it? Hide and seek puzzles. I don't remember those pictures where you are, those hidden object games and all of that. Because there is such a mess, and even more, because things tends to end up messing one with the other. It is obviously harder anyways for you to find different solutions. If you are not aware about those, you cannot really find them. But on the other side, if you are aware of only one necessity and everything else in your environment is not playing an active antagonizing role in your search for that particular thing, it will be always easier for you to do it. But at the same time, I don't think that there is not much to answer.
They have to look around and look around and look around to find the answer. So some kinds of things in the world we notice without attention. Features, we can look everywhere at once in the display. That's how we're so fast. Things just pop out, and the flat slope is mathematically right. Doesn't matter how many things are out there, boom, you get it right away. Other things where we have to glue together two features require our attention to do the gluing. Things that are together, we have to search spot, spot, spot serially. We don't feel the intuition of pop out, and we have a steep slope in search. Okay, now I need somebody from the chair who's pretty confident in their math.
Oh no.
But it's a little bit harder than before, but I'll tell you, you don't have to go into triple digits.
Please.
Don't help me. Yeah, I owe you one. Okay, I'll come back to you if there's one more. I can't remember, sorry. Okay, okay. Ready? So you're going to see some numbers, and I want you to add them and tell me what they are. And I'm going to be pretty fast. Is that okay? The sum.
What?
Talk to him. Yes, okay. All right. Ready? Yes. Ready? Yes. Ready? Yes. Ready? Yes. Now, what were the letters between them? Sorry, it's a trick. It would have been me, sir. Yeah, sorry. Interesting. Okay. Now, you can go, oh, that was a trick. How reasonable is that? Well, let me make the argument that in order to add the 5 and the 8, you had to look at the letters. You had to look at the letters in the middle, okay? But because your mind is not attuned to that, it's as if they weren't there almost. You know something's there, right? Okay. It's right in front of you. It doesn't seem that hard. But again, if your mind is tuned to something, the other stuff gets fuzzy and okay. And you got the R, right? Somewhere. Okay? Now let me ask one more question. Do you know the colors the letters were in? No, that's not. And in fact, you don't. So thanks very much for willing to do that. So again, we just said to bind shape and color, we need the glue of attention. We're not attending to the middle letters. They seem irrelevant, even though they're right in front of us, even though we have to walk through them in our mind's eye to move from one number to the other. They're like, I don't care, right? Boom, you move to the other side. So it's not just seeing something, it's attending to something that really matters. And on top of that, you need a lot of attention. If you do glue together the shape and the color, that requires a lot of focus. What does this mean in everyday life, okay? In everyday life, we're probably walking around constantly having free-floating features around us on things we're not paying attention to. You know, right now I'm probably seeing like a yellow computer over there, and I'm seeing, you know, some blue fire extinguisher sign over there. Right? Now, why am I not freaked out by that? And why are you not freaked out by that? And why is it almost certain? Because if you're not attending to things, you're constantly having free-floating features that are incorrect. Colors and shapes are just floating around you. Why are we not disturbed by that? Because we're not attending it to start with, okay? Because it's like you didn't notice the letters were there, but then you're not bothered. They're just free-floating information. You're not paying attention to start with. But that's what's happening in your mind all the time, and these experiments demonstrate that empirically and directly.
Okay, there it is. Wait, here we there are two different things happening. One is, yes, it is true that we struggle to notice every single thing that is around us all the time, but at the same time, also, if you know what is it that you're existing, you do not need to be constantly checking your surroundings. Only if you are paranoid, I will say, you will be constantly trying to analyze and trying to properly see what is it that in every single place of the site in which you are staying, things are acting and all of that. If not, there isn't a real need for you to try any of that or to even have the necessity of observing any of that. On one hand, on the other, it also happens, and more particular on the sense of the analysis and the test that was done with the words, the information that was kind of escaped is a lot of times we don't really read the whole words. Rather, we take the first and the last letter. We consult all the other things that are in the middle and we kind of assess what it is that the word tries to say. And even more in a case in which you do not even need to see the letters, but rather the first and last digits and say them aloud and all the other things. Because it wasn't stated before. Also do not need attention. Why would you even at any given point try to do that? What is the necessity of doing it if you were never given that task, I would say. But yeah, I don't know, crazy.
There's also interesting temporal constraints. So I'll describe this experiment because it's too hard to pull off here. So there's a phenomenon called the attentional blink. So what's weird about these things, right? I mean, why is our minds like this? And you know, you can speculate on that, but it's really well documented. We attend to a small percentage of what's around us, and we need a lot of resources to know something well or learn something well. So here's another example. What participants see is letters presented very quickly, one after the other, E, L, H. Their job is to report any numbers that they see. You go boom, 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 boom. What were the numbers? Okay, pretty fast. but humanly possible. The interesting question is, what's the time gap between the two numbers that you see? There's usually two numbers, okay? We'll call this one the first one, time 1, this is the second one, time 2. What's the gap between them, and how does that influence whether you're likely to report them? So here's what's called the attentional blink, and a slightly scary graph, but I'll tell you, okay? And let me tell you what it's like, the metaphor, and then let me show you the result. The metaphor is this: your mind, moment to moment to moment, is kind of like if you can imagine you're next to a stream, a big stream with a lot of fish zooming by. You have a fish net. You dip into the stream. You'll catch something at that moment. But if a fish comes by just as you pull your fish net out, will you catch that one? No. Okay. So here's what happens. Here's the time between between the presentation. If there's approximately 3 numbers between them, a couple hundred milliseconds, you're almost a chance for the possibility of reporting the second digit. It's sort of like the fish you can't catch because you just took your net out, except it's your mind, but it's not a physical limitation. So here's what it's like. So this is perfect performance. This is chance performance. If it immediately follows, one number immediately follows the next number, you're going to get both. And the way to think about that is, it's kind of like the fish net again, right? You just put in your fish net. You got one fish, and if you're lucky, while you're kind of pulling it out, the next fish just swims in there. You got 2, right? Okay. Now your fish net's out, and if something else comes and something else comes and something else comes, you're pretty bad at recognizing it was there at all. A little bit of time comes back, and you put your fish net back in, and you're catching everything again. About a half second. But how weird is that your mind works like that for spotting the digits? That it has to take a break. There's a part of your mind that's getting the digits, and once it's gotten a digit, for the next couple of 100 milliseconds, it's not going to have room to pay attention to the following digits. How weird is that? Okay, it's because our mind has all these kind of limitations on what we perceive in the environment. Here's another.
Okay, there it is. Wait, because it is also kind of important to notice and more to point out properly, because you are not simply telling about the property of paying or not attention. You are also toying with the idea of maybe what you are trying to observe needs a whole array of actions to be done after you see that. For example, the test itself was, once you see a number, you also need to say that number aloud, or something like that. I don't remember. So you have a series of steps that you need to follow after the first thing is completed, that is, you see a number. The whole way in which the brain can process all of those things is not such an easy one that you can dismiss everything else and not even be worried about what is it that is being said or not. You need to accept also that a part of your limitation is the things that you are doing and the different processes that you are engaging in, because otherwise it wouldn't even try to make any sense if you were always impeded by your environmental energy. But yeah, at the same time, it is still a possibility that somehow we find ourselves struggling with different tasks in our life. So yeah, continue.
Sort of fun example of that. Okay, so here's a task. One of these dots are going to, one dot is going to blink, and your job is to keep your eye on that dot. When they say keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the dot, and when it stops moving, notice which is the one you've been keeping your eye on. So the first one's going to be easy, but it'll give you a feeling, and then you'll see the answer given to you. Ready? So people call this object tracking. Okay, here we go. The one blinking?
This is easy, compared to other things.
Now let's try one thing moving, but even faster.
Yeah. Indeed. Faster. Haha.
So now let's try tracking 4 things.
What? What? No, okay. This is getting impossible, my God. I understand the idea, but I know I can't. Well, this one is easy, at least, but yeah. No. Here I already lost. I know it. I know it already. I don't even need to worry about myself not being capable of doing this. I am not physically capable of. What was a good test, basically?
Last example. So here's a graph at, with a high level of performance, how people do. So two things matter, and you might have felt that. How many you're viewing, the number of targets, and under many circumstances, people seem to be able to do about 3 to 4. But also the speed matters too. You might have felt that too. Both things contribute. There's a lot of interest in this 3 to 4 limit that people seem to have for things that they track, 3 to 4 items. And there's a lot of work at Harvard actually in developmental psychology and related. Let me just say a word about that to you. There's a thought that pretty young, when you're a kid, you get to about this 3 to 4 things. That our minds naturally can track about, notice, or keep account of about 3 to 4 things in the world. And so people who study, for example, math in the way that humans perform it, think that we have in our brains approximately 2 systems that are physically different and culturally different. One of them being, and there's lots of debates about this, I should tell you this, but one of them being something like accurate counting up to about 3 or 4, and then cultures that don't have an organized system of math, the next answer is many. You've heard this, right? It's like 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, and then a lot. Now, we don't stop counting at 4, but we might if we were in a true state of nature and we didn't have an organized system of math and weren't taught that and how it relates to our language abilities. So there's a lot of debate about the exactness of this, but there's something fascinating about this idea that our minds can have about 4 units of information kept in mind, kept active, that we can track, and that lots of things in the world, reflect that limitation, including, for example, exact counting. And without the cultural invention of mathematics, we would count 1, 2, 3, 4 lots, okay? But there's debates about this because exactly how you measure it can influence how you think about it.
Okay, but also it is important to know that why I'm repeating the same thing for the 8th time already. If you haven't ever tried something like this, why would you expect anybody to be able to perform to such a degree that they can amazingly do this kind of task? Obviously, it comes from the side also of being prepared for these things. Even if you know, in this particular case, even if you know that you will have to track 4 different objects, if you haven't properly accustomed yourself to the whole environment, you will never be able to do it to such a speed. It needs a whole setup of previous things for it to properly kind of work, I don't know. I might be a very.
Now, can attention be trained? Could you be trained to have much
Yes.
more attention? So in many ways, we don't think you can, but in some ways you can. And part of this has come out of this ironic line of research about things that are supposed to be bad for us. Some of them might be okay for us. Video games, okay? If you're in my generation, people are going, oh boy, those video games are messing up all these kids. And isn't that what you guys think? No. Okay. All right. Okay. So Dr. Bavelier at Rochester has done a series of studies showing that if you play certain kinds of video games, you actually do expand your attentional capacity to practice on those games because they make you practice a lot. So here's what she did. She took people who didn't have experience playing video games, and now we're specifically talking about first-person shooter video games, okay? And had them do 30 hours of practice, okay? And she looked at their ability to do multiple object tracking of the kind you just saw, those dots whizzing around, okay, before and after. So the games, as you know, are very different, but they involve keeping tracks of lots of things happening at once. And here's what she found: that these people who played 30 hours, these were people who were not gamers beforehand, got better at performing these tasks of keeping track of multiple objects. Of all things, a group that's super interested in that is the military. Why do you think that is?
No. No! I was mute. This is a coincidence. I hate it. Thank you, Copa. Anyways, I was trying to say, yeah, basically video games. Also, hello, Copa, and yeah, and basically, it is true. The video games can be useful somehow, completely against what this particular teacher even said. Oh, no, yeah, you cannot use them in any way. No, yeah, so yeah. Now, after that tiny failure, we might as well continue with the lesson because I don't have anything else to say. What an amazing year that was, my opinion.
Okay. There was just a paper published recently that if they take a brain image of your brain, they can predict how good a gamer you'll become if you haven't been a gamer before. Okay, these are adults.
What?
Okay? If you have bigger basal ganglia, you'll become a better
Gamer.
gamer in the next week. All right, if you're starting from scratch.
Gamer.
The military is interesting because you may know this. An increasing amount of warfare is video game-like, which is a kind of a haunting thing because there's real people really being killed. Okay, but do you know the whole thing with the drones? Have you followed this? Some of you? Okay, so the U.S. has had a lot of success, and there's a lot of debates about the ethics of this, and sending in unmanned small airplanes into the Middle East and using that to kill opponents. All right, the person sitting in Washington D.C. or somewhere else is watching kind of like a video game when they make that decision about whether that's somebody to be attacked. Right? So a lot of operations now are computer-based, and they're kind of like a video game at one level,
Was
and
I
real life
muted the whole
hard
fucking time?
decisions at another level benefit.
Was I muted the whole fucking time? Was I muted the whole fucking time? Oh my, no. No, tell me, no.
The other benefits, but not this one. It's not just video games. It's the mental processes that are practiced in the video games that give you certain talents or not or abilities you didn't have before. Okay, the last experiment I want to tell you is this. So everything we talked about now, except a little bit about the stuff in the second year when you're shadowing, has been about this idea that we don't pay much attention to what's around us. We don't get much in our mind compared to what we think we would, even if it's right in front of us, even if it's all over the place, even if we've seen a penny 17,000 times. But there are some studies that have shown something pretty interesting also, which is reveals something very paradoxical about the human mind. That we can sometimes know things without seeing, and people call that subliminal perception. So how this experiment works is this, and let me show you one example behaviorally. I'm going to show you one brain example. So here's what happens. Let's pretend you have to read words aloud, and we measure to the millisecond how fast you read the word.
What?
If I show you this word, and I show you this word, and I measure how quickly you read the word doctor, you're slower than if you read the word nurse and then you read the word doctor, okay? Because these two are related, and something in your mind gets warmed up when you see this. It doesn't get warmed up in a relevant way when you see this word. Does that make sense? Okay. You see one word and you read the next one. If they're related semantically or conceptually by meaning, you're faster for the second one. Okay, that's easy. That's not too surprising. The clever discovery was this. What they do is they do something called, they present these words under what they call masked conditions. On the computer monitor, you get something busy like a row of X's. For 10 milliseconds only, 10 thousandths of a second, the word appears, and then there's a bunch of X's again. So it's like a flash of X's, okay? And people, they create situations, and I'll show you this again in a moment. They create situations where people say, I'm not sure anything was there. I certainly don't know what it is. You have to be there, and you have to convince yourself as a scientist that you've done that, all right? And then they have you read the word doctor in full view. And in these circumstances where people cannot tell you that they saw a word, and they certainly can't tell you what the word was, you still get faster. So they don't know that they saw church or nurse, but something in their mind picks it up. And what's picked up in the mind under the subliminal presentation changes the behavior when you have an overt act of behavior reading the next word aloud. So this is hardcore empirical evidence that your mind is able to pick up stuff at the level of meaning. Think about the paradox. You think when I read a word, I see it, and then I understand its meaning, right? Here it's flashed in such a way that you don't feel like you see it, but you extract its meaning anyway. And we know that because it makes you read the next word faster only if they're related in meaning. Your mind is subliminally primed. Now, some years ago, people used to worry that advertisers could do this really cleverly and make you go do stuff. The famous examples historically is, can they make you buy popcorn, which is now, since it's $48, right? It's harder to do, but can they make you buy popcorn, at the movie theater, or can they make you buy a Ford or a Chevrolet or something like that with the right subliminal message and that kinds of stuff? Every experiment that's been done to ask whether subliminal messages of this kind would make you get up and go do something like buy a car, or change what country you live in or something. It never works, okay? It never works, okay? Nobody's ever been able to show that in any experimental condition, which doesn't prevent some companies from selling these products to store owners or thinking they're getting their sales up, right? But there's been never any evidence that these kinds of subliminal presentations make people do something big and complicated, like get up and go buy popcorn or choose one product over another. People have never been able to show that under controlled experiment, but they have been able to show these kinds of changes in behavior that last a moment, So what's happening in your brain? So this is the last experiment. Again, they're presenting these things that, in the same place in the computer monitor, all these things to fill your eyes, and then they present a word for either 29 milliseconds. They present it either very briefly or in full view. Okay, so here it's visible because they remove the confusing visual information just before and after it. Here, people don't report seeing it. And scientifically, it's really important because you can say, oh, people didn't see it. But it's really important in our field to say, we're so convinced. And why are we so convinced? Because we say, was there any word present? Because sometimes there's a word present and sometimes there isn't. Just, is there a word present? If you could see the word because these things were a little bit away in time and you couldn't see it, you almost always got it if it was visible. You almost never got it if it was here, right? You almost never said there was a word present. Could you name it? Yes, if you saw it like this. You couldn't name it if it was presented briefly, if it was surrounded by this visual stuff that makes it hard to see. If they give you a memory test for it, if you saw it fully in full view, you got it. If it was hidden like this, you didn't. And finally, they give you forced choice. They say, did you see the word note or did you see the word coat? Choose between the two. People are still at chance, 50-50, okay? So they're really pushing people to say, really, did you see anything? Do you know what it was? They're completely a chance. They don't remember anything. They can't even tell if a word was there. But we know it influences their mind, and now let me show you what we know of how it influences your brain.
Okay.
So what's shown here in green are parts of your brain that respond when a word is shown that you can see, and what's shown here in red are the parts of your brain that respond for that subliminally presented word, the word that's presented, but you can't tell that any word was there, never mind what word it was. So first, you can see there's a lot more brain response for the visible than the masked or subliminal word. That makes a lot of sense. You see something, you think about it, you know it happened. But you can measure what's happening in the brain. It's very small. Take this spot. Here's a response if it's in full view. Here's a tiny, 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 tiny response when it's presented in that minimalist way. But it's measurable and it's present. And we know that it's enough for you to figure out unconsciously what the meaning of that word was. So then, we end with this paradox, which is on the one hand, we live in a world where we only notice a small fraction of what's around us, what we focus our attention to because we have limited attentional capacity. On the other hand, there are channels of information that sneak into your mind. They probably influence you only for a few moments. In the unattended ear, the cocktail party, you're actually picking up that conversation because if they say your name, you'll get it. Here's an example where your brain is responding to a word you cannot identify or know that it was presented. And those things can slightly move your behavior around, but not in a science fiction or marketing dream that they could make you go do something really big. Okay, that's never been shown, and people have tried to show that. So attention is really weirder than you think, right? You don't notice a lot of stuff, but a few things you don't think are influencing you here and there all the time. Thanks very much.
Wow! Amazing, basically. So that's the basic explanation. Yeah, nothing really else to add. At the end of the day, it still is an interesting thing. And I mean, it isn't that it lacks potential, but rather the idea of having some parts not properly discussed also makes anything a little bit harder. I wouldn't say completely, but a little bit harder, That minimal fraction of more hardened than what is needed, So yeah, basically, but at the same time, good knowledge, more knowledge, therefore more tools to utilize in the future. Not so much in this particular case because there wasn't even a tool as to how to increase the memory, at least directly. I would say probably the most obvious one was training. If you train yourself, you might as well increase your brain capacity. In this case, your attention and capacity for retaining things. But if there is no conscious effort, there might as well never be any kind of reward or blessing. So yeah, I don't know. Basically, a lot of things and interesting as always, but also need to do that. Okay? In this particular case, also I want to research you because I might as well be interested in eating something as I am hungry. And I woke up and I literally started seeing the notice. It was so late, so yeah. And it was beautiful once again another nice occasion here, but without doing it. Now let me see if we can try someone. No, I can't finish this properly because my dog started to bow bow bow. Yeah, my three dogs started to properly start realizing the act of barking. So yeah, where are we going to ride? Why is so many people streaming on a Tuesday, my brother? Oh yeah, I don't know. Let me see. No, no idea. Let's do this one. I think. Let's go here. I don't know. But anyways, as I was trying to say before getting amazed at the amount of people streaming in a Tuesday. Yeah, as always, thanks for everything. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being present. Thanks for the message. Thanks for all. Thanks for lurking. Thanks for watching the world. Also, yeah, thanks for everything. So yeah, in this particular case, what we are reading is Finnish, who is playing cornucopia. Arriba en this. That is all I can say because I don't know that game in particular. So yeah, as always, thanks. Thanks for all. Thanks for paying attention. Thanks for learning. If it was something that you could utilize properly, thanks for all your patience. And when the next opportunity arises, as always, we will see what is it that we are going to properly try guess, try to properly intake, try to discuss. But now we share a little bit of a no fucking my message. I don't care. We'll see what is it that we can do to rest, to properly take a break. And yeah, no worries. Remember to say hi later. And as always, thanks for all. But now it is time for us to leave. So yeah, right. Bye. Thanks for all. Goodbye. Right. Bye.